Hey friends and fam, it's John and it's time for the J-Mart Cast for Monday, December 5th. What's going on? How are you? Hope you've had a great week. I've had a pretty fun one. I had a fun Christmas party with some friends that I just came back from. Yesterday night was the party and had a great time just seeing old faces and dancing all night long. And also this week was the end of my November challenge where I was doing squats for 20 reps every day. I started with 135 pounds at the beginning of the month in November and ended the end of the month on the 29th actually with 200 pounds for 20 reps. I was pretty happy with getting up to that weight to be able to do that many reps. That was pretty much my goal, and I was pretty happy to get there, like I already said, and then I was going to test if my 1 rep max squat would be, significantly improved based on doing those 20 rep sets throughout the month of November. I was hoping that I'd be able to match my previous all-time best for a 1 rep max, which was 295, but I was actually ended up being 50 pounds short of it. I maxed out at 245. After that, I knew I couldn't lift any heavier. So I think what I decided to do is to just keep squatting for December, and now just switching from the high rep sets to low 5 to 1 rep sets and see how high I can bring that 245 number, see if I can match the 295 and push past it a little bit for around the end of December. We'll see. I haven't really tried it too much because I'm just letting my legs recover a little bit, because it just felt like a lot to be to do 200 pounds for 20 reps on one day, and then the next day to do a 1 rep max at 245. It was hurting my hips. So it's better now though. So I think I'm ready to, now that this Christmas party is over this weekend, ready to get back to it and do some heavy squats and see if I can get to 300. Let's see. Had a good week of training jiu-jitsu. Went to class, I think, 3 times this week, which is great. And I'm getting better at armbars. And I don't know what I can say about it. Just that you got to go fast, I guess, to catch opponents with it. And the problem with going fast is then you could actually hurt somebody. So part of doing arm bars is you have to do it in a way where you catch the person but also don't injure them so much so that you make them stop and then not be able to train for a long time, and then have some sort of revenge or something they want to get on you. So anyway, I've been practicing a lot of arm bars, but it's always not sure how applicable this actually is. What I mean is so if I'm going slow as I'm practicing it to make sure that I'm not really hurting my person who I'm training with, then am I going to actually be able to execute it properly when I need to pull it off? Hopefully, yes, but I don't know. You just question it, I guess. Anyway, last week, a friend of mine who listened to last week's episode just sent me a quick message about the podcast, and I just thought I'd quickly share it and address one of the points. First of all, to the person who sent me the message, if you're listening, I appreciate you sending it, and I'm not going to reveal your name, just the fact that you sent it to me, just the message that is. And what he said was, "Hey man, listen to the podcast on my way home. It was a good laugh out loud of the knee warts. I had a story about my wife cutting a wart off of my knee. He says, no clue that wasn't covered by OHIP. Yeah, when I went to, this is the second one that I've had to get lobbed off, but when I went to get it done the first time from my family doctor, because they use liquid nitrogen to kind of get it first before they cut it off, that was the part that wasn't covered. And anyway, that's when I first learned that it wasn't covered. But so I just said that on the podcast last time, and he was like, he didn't know that that was the case. He said, love the letter to your baby daughter. May have to do that for mine as well. So last week I had just shared a small part of my letter that I wrote to my daughter for her first birthday that I'm going to give to her a lot later when she's like old enough to understand for her to read, basically. And then the last thing he said is the point that I want to address is he was saying nothing wrong with investing in ETFs, LOL. I think like in a sense, yes, you're right. There's actually, I guess you could say there's nothing wrong with it. And part of the reason we think that, I think, is that because basically this is the way that we have to save money, right? Because if we just hold on to money, as I've said many times before, it gets devalued and the purchasing power is lost. But if you invest in ETFs, generally speaking, over a long enough period of time, the value is increasing. So that way you're not losing the purchasing power of the money you've earned. And instead you're able to maintain with the increase in the price of goods and services over time, which is good. This is what you want. But what that does is it means that saving is no longer an option. So it's because like we've basically saving is impossible. So we have to invest in these ETFs. And now I guess that works in a way, but now what we're doing is giving all our money to these big ass companies. Like the two main ones are like BlackRock and Vanguard. And through them, you're buying these shares of these ETFs. But in reality, they're the real owners of these shares, and they're the ones that get to have all the voting powers and such. So it's like first of all, you can't save, you have to invest. And then now that you're investing in the entire market, and you've got a trusted third party that's basically taking the responsibility away from you. And I don't know, I think ultimately you as an individual would make a better choice investing if you were more fully engaged in the decision-making process. And like, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to be investing immediately as you start making money, right? It makes more sense to be saving as you're making money. And then over time, if you've saved enough and then you have an interest in something, in some sort of business that you might have an expertise in, then with the money you've saved, you can then invest in that business and then be really engaged in it. But the way it works now is it's always like based on loans. First of all, as soon as you start making money, you have to invest it. And, you know, what if you make the wrong investment? But I guess you get over that hump by just investing in ETFs and hope that just over a long enough period of time, you're going up anyway. And then if you want to start a business, instead of having money saved up that you invest into the business, instead you have to take a loan. You have to take credit. So I don't know. I think that's a broken system. It's a messed up system. It doesn't make sense. But it's also like the best we've got at the time. Like right now, it seems like that's the best way to make sure you're not losing too much money, is to just invest in these ETFs. So like, you know, like my buddy says, like there's nothing wrong with it. In a sense, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, but there's also like some deep systematic problems that like I think need to be addressed, that if they did, then wouldn't be necessary to invest in just across the board ETFs. Anyway, that's just like my opinion, man. Gonna do a quick Bitcoin update. Then I'm going to read a little bit, kind of history, I guess you could say. And then that'll be it for today's podcast episode. Okay, so block height. What block height are we on? 765,927. Price of one Bitcoin is trading at $17,206 US. For $1 you can buy 5,812 Satoshis. That is the smallest unit a Bitcoin can be subdivided into. One Bitcoin subdivides 100 million times. Each one of those is called a Satoshi, named after the creator of Bitcoin, which is just a pseudonym. We don't actually know who that is, but his name or pseudonym was Satoshi Nakamoto. And those small subunits are called sats or satoshis. Satoshis are sats for short. If you're interested in buying Bitcoin and you live in Canada, I recommend using Shakepay, which is an exchange that will take your regular dollars and let you buy Bitcoin. And then from there, you'd have to take that into self-custody. At least that's what I'd recommend. If you don't know how, I'm available for help for that. But anyway, if you want to use Shakepay, I have a referral code in the description of the podcast that gives you a $10 reward for $100 spent on your first Bitcoin. Okay, I'm going to read a passage from part 3 from the Fiat Cave Substack, part 3 from An Allegory of Monetary Deception. So this is talking about how in the Great Depression, or like after the Great Depression happened, there was a lot of economic upheaval, obviously, which led to gold flowing out of the banking system. So in response to the gold leaving the banks on April 5th, 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 6102. In this order, it required that all persons are required to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owned by them to a Federal Reserve Bank, branch, or agency, or to any member of the Federal Reserve. Should anyone be found with gold in their custody, the penalty was a $10,000 fine or 10 years imprisonment or both. Executive Order 6102 eliminated people's rights to own real money, gold. To avoid imprisonment, people had to turn their gold to the government at the official rate of $20.67, and there was no longer a way for individuals to protect themselves against the devaluation of the currency due to fractional reserve banking. The following year, the U.S. passed the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, which devalued the dollar by increasing the price of gold from $20.67 per ounce to $35 per ounce. So basically what they did is they forced people to give their gold to the government in return for paper money, and then they decreed that the gold was worth more in paper money than how much they gave people for it. And oh man, this is ridiculous, right? This happened in the 1930s, like 90 years ago. By revaluing gold, the government was able to create more dollars, further inflating the money supply. This act by the US government was no different than the Roman emperors creating more money for themselves by issuing coins of gold and silver mixed with base metals such as copper. Following the Second World War, the leaders of the developed nations met in Bretton Woods in New Hampshire in 1944 to create a new international financial system. The Bretton Woods system was structured with the US dollar at the center. Before and during the Second World War, many countries sent their gold to the US to protect it from the conflict in Europe. Since the US had the gold, the US dollar was directly pegged to the gold at $35 an ounce, and all other fiat currencies were pegged to the dollar. The Bretton Woods system worked for a while until European nations wanted to repatriate their gold. France specifically was concerned about the US spending during the 1960s, mainly the Vietnam War and the Great Society Plan. The US debt had skyrocketed, and there were doubts that the US had sufficient gold reserves to back the spending. After the US bluff was called, on August 15, 1971, President Nixon decided to close the gold window, meaning that countries that had deposited gold with the US as part of the Bretton Woods monetary system had their gold stolen. President Nixon blamed international currency speculators for his decision to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. However, it was clear to those paying attention that this was a default on the U.S. obligations under the Bretton Woods system. Due to the massive spending plans that the U.S. Embarked on, there were far more dollars created than gold held in reserves. Yeah, so basically they had two defaults. First, the default was in the 1930s when all the money was leaving the banking system, like in the United States itself, and then the U.S. citizens were cut off from accessing real money, accessing real gold, and you could no longer hold gold yourself, and only the federal government itself was allowed to be the one that could have gold in its possession. But then other international governments could still exchange or convert their dollars for gold, but then they defaulted on that as well in the 1970s. So then, yeah, all this gold that these countries had sent to the US to protect for them, well, they were so well protected that they never got it back. Yeah, there's a crazy part of history that doesn't really get taught in schools, I feel like, because I don't know, right? Maybe it's too dangerous for people to ask questions about money. Anyway, that's all I'm going to talk about this week. Keep it short. I feel like I prefer these short episodes anyway. Thank you everybody for taking the time and listening to the J-Mart Cast. As I always say, I appreciate you all very much. Thank you for supporting me and sending me messages every now and again. And please continue to keep listening, continue to share the episodes, and rate it if you haven't done so already. All right. I love you all. Have a great week. Stay active. Be grateful. J-Mart out.